Good evening. This meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission will come to order for June 19th, 2024, or as it's known, Juneteenth. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Lori.
Chairman Richardson.
Here.
Vice Chairman Aton.
Here.
Secretary Grant.
Here.
Member Childs.
Here.
Member Garrod.
Here.
Member Faison. Member Moscoso.
Here.
Alternate Member Findler.
Here.
Alternate Member Rogers. School Board Member McLaughlin.
Here.
We do have a quorum, and Member Flinder, you can come up and take Mr. Fason's seat if you like.
We did get a response from Mr. Faison that he'd be here tonight.
Okay, let's see. Okay, next is approval of the minutes of June 5th, 2024. Has everybody read the minutes? Are there any corrections or deletions? The minutes?
I don't believe so. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Secretary Grant. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Minutes are approved. There is, Chelsea, would you read the quasi-judicial confirmation procedures, please?
The notice on the agenda provides that all persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to the procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary.
Thank you. There's no consent agenda. There's no old business. Number 9A, new business. Eddie?
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, Commissioners. This is item 9A, Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment Number 6, 2024, Tranquility. The applicant is requesting a Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment, SSA, with rezoning to correctly reflect the wetlands along the Addison Canal east of South Washington Avenue, US 1, in the Tranquility Multi-Use Development. The purpose of the amendment is to protect the Addison Canal by correcting the conservation land use and OR zoning district boundaries. The regional mixed use and conservation land use designations and zoning were approved and reapproved by ordinances 15-1999, 40-1999 related to Comprehensive Plan Amendment 98-1A, ordinances 78-2003, 80-2005, and 19-2015. The Antigua Bay, also known as Tranquility Development Agreement with Master Plan for the entire 340-plus acre development was approved in 2015 and amended 3 times with the most recent adoption occurring in 2023. The final and 4th amendment currently designates the underlying RMU 100 subdistrict over the Addison Canal with the conservation future land use. The subject area is identified as a 6.8 acre preserved natural creek on Exhibit B of the master plan and labeled as Open Space B on Exhibit B1. The proposed new boundaries of the Conservation Land Use Amendment and OR rezoning are located within the said boundaries identified on the master plan. The applicant has provided an environmental study and wetland survey, and based on the survey, the OR boundary line is being adjusted to be consistent with the corrected wetlands boundary. I'd also like to add the staff recommendation is on page 21. And it reads, the staff recommends adopting SSA number 6, 2024 to amend the future land use map by changing the land use designation from conservation and regional mixed use to conservation to correct the boundaries of the jurisdictional wetlands along the area identified as generally along the Addison Canal lying east of South Washington Avenue as described in Exhibit A. With the rezoning, recommend approval of the request to amend the area generally along the Addison Canal in the same area. These recommendations are based upon staff analysis, information, and evidence presented and in accordance with the city charter of the City of Titusville, the Code of Ordinances and Land Development Regulations, Section 34-40 of the Code, the adopted comprehensive plan, and the provisions of Chapter 163 and 166 Florida statutes. Last, I just wanted to point the commission to page 72, which is a map that illustrates the request. So this is a map showing the existing future land use on the left-hand side. And you'll see there's a tan area, which is the regional mixed use future land use designation. There's a green ribbon, which is the conservation future land use. And then the red outline is the wetland boundary that was provided by the applicant's wetland survey. And so you'll see on the right-hand side, if approved, this would correct the boundary so that the green conservation area is only within the areas shown as wetlands. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions of Eddie? I have one of Eddie or Chelsea. I noticed that 15 pages of the environmental report have been redacted. It's all black. I understand that it's done for the protection of the critters in that wetlands area. Who redacted those 15 pages?
Our planning staff.
Can we take a look at them if we come into the planning office?
As long as it's not it's exempt from Florida statute that says that the public, to be fair, I don't know. We haven't had a request to review the redacted information. Chelsea, do you have any thoughts on that?
I personally don't see how you can redact 15 pages and us and the council vote on it.
Without looking at the content that was redacted, I can't really comment on the substance of it because I didn't do that review myself. But I could definitely explore whether board members and decision makers have the ability to review those redacted documents outside of a public meeting in your one-on-one meetings. I don't have a direct answer for that without doing some research, but I'd be happy to look into that for you.
Please do. Thank you. Any questions of the staff? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant.
Is this on? Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue. Chairman, members. As staff explained, all we're doing is correcting the comprehensive plan and the zoning for Addison Creek wetland area. And it says in the comp plan, in order to provide more accurate mapping of wetlands, when the city receives a wetland delineation on specific sites, the delineations will be accepted by the city and the future land use map will be amended accordingly. The applicant will provide a survey of the wetland boundaries along the Addison Canal based upon ground truthing. And so that was provided. And we had actually thought that based on that, we didn't have to submit an application, but we still had to submit an application for the land use change and the zoning, so that's what we did. And so we'd request your approval. As far as the pages being redacted in the environmental report, I don't know what that is. We submitted the report as it was. When I looked at it, I just got this today, I assumed maybe that was photographs that didn't come through. I did not go back to check it, but I'm not sure what that's about, so I can't answer that question. Any questions?
Yes, I went into Tranquility yesterday. No, it was Sunday. And I tried to find where the Addison Canal is, and I could not find it.
So, do you know where the hospital has the Children's Center on US 1 South? It's south, just south of the Chrysler dealership.
Yeah, I'm aware of
There's a
that.
parish. On the south end of parish, it crosses, it's diagonal, but the culvert under the road is not. And if the culvert always has markers on it, so people traveling won't run off of the head wall,
It
but
has
it's
to
right there.
come through that piece of property.
Yes. So it bisects part of Parish's property where their stormwater is on the south, and then it dissects a part of the north part of Tranquility, northwest.
Okay. And I noticed that they're already building a lot of nice houses in that subdivision. This has nothing to do with the rezoning request. I noticed that they are cast concrete instead of concrete block. Are they cast on site or are they cast at another site and trucked in?
So there are more than one builder in the site, and the builder that has started, and I understand has a lot of the homes, he actually builds with cast-in-place concrete.
Okay.
And so that's, pretty safe structure.
I was kind of surprised to see homes already going up.
Yeah.
Any questions of Mr. Honeycutt? Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any cards, Lori?
No additional cards on that one.
No cards. Okay, it comes back to the commission. Any further questions or must go so?
Eddie, on page 17, line 8, it discusses the National Wetland Inventory Map of 1988. It says these wetlands show on this map have not been ground truth. In order to provide more accurate mapping of the wetlands, when the city receives a wetland delineation on specific sites, the delineations will be accepted by the city of Titusville in the future land use map. So my question is, could you explain the process? So if they have their own environmental study, do we take that and we put that in our comp plan based off of what they've given us? And if that's the case, how do we vet, I think the company's biotech, how do we vet to make sure that's an accurate environmental study?
So the way that a wetland survey is conducted is a wetland scientist will flag the boundaries of a wetland, and then a surveyor will come in behind and with a GPS tool mark where those flags are, and that gives you the wetland survey. The city back in around 1988, after the National Wetlands Inventory Map had been issued, which is a national scale map of where wetlands are located throughout the country. The city used that to apply conservation future land use to protect wetlands, acknowledging that those aren't ground truth wetlands and that there will be a need to amend the boundaries over time. And so this is the city's process currently, is that when we receive new information about the data of where a wetland is, we go through the rezoning and the small scale amendment to change the future land use designation and the accompanying zoning designation on the property to match those district boundaries.
Any other questions of the staff? Seeing none, anyone care to make a motion? Member Childs.
I make a motion that we recommend approval to the city council for 9A small scale comprehensive plan amendment number 6-2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Aton, Vice Chairman Aton. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Garad,
Yes?
Vice Chairman Aton,
Yes.
Member Childs,
Yes.
Member Moscoso,
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Faison,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, Eddie, you expected this question. When will it come up before city council?
This item will be coming to City Council on July 23rd.
Is there a second part to this?
Lori, could you repeat the motion that you heard?
I heard it was approved. And then,
Approval of the SSA? And that's what I heard. So I believe that Member Childs intended to capture both the future land use and rezoning ordinance by his motion. It was a pretty concise report. The public hearing for that item was, presenting both of those two ordinances, and that is fine. And as we go into our next item, I want to just reiterate that the same process will be utilized for the SSA. There will be one public hearing for the two items. If the board members are inclined to make a motion for both in one motion, you can do that, or you could separate them and have two separate motions.
Any questions? What Chelsea said? Next item.
Thank you, sir. This is item 9B, Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment Number 3, 2022, Bristol, Titusville. And before I read the summary, I just wanted to highlight that on your agenda tonight, there's item 9B, which is the change to the future land use designation for this subject property and the rezoning. And then item 9C, which if the ordinances in 9B are approved, item 9C would be an amendment to the text in our comprehensive plan, enabling the PD that would have been approved earlier in 9B. So again, the overall project is being covered by both items 9B and 9C. In item 9B, we'll start with that item. You're considering the change to the future land use designation and the rezoning. There will be one public hearing, and we'll need two votes, two actions. The applicant, Bristol Development Group LLC, is requesting a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment SSA with rezoning to develop a planned development project consisting of 6 four-story multifamily buildings with a total of 304 units, associated clubhouse, open space areas, and ancillary parking and stormwater infrastructure on property located at 8225 Windover Way. The property lies south of Cheney Highway, west of Windover Way and Windover Farms of Titusville Residential Subdivision, east of I-95, and north of land currently utilized as a hobby remote-controlled aircraft park. The request is illustrated on a master plan and is controlled by the PD ordinance. A separate amendment to add the proposed residential density of 11.7 units per acre to the comprehensive plan is included, Comprehensive Plan Amendment Number 2, 2024. I'll read the findings. Items that support the proposed request. The small-scale planned unit development land use amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan text, regular amendment, will limit the residential density to a scale that is appropriate to the surrounding residential land uses. The rezoning and master plan are generally consistent with planned unit development comprehensive plan land use category and the land development regulations, including the PD and rezoning criteria described in section 33-8 and 34-40, and master plan criteria described in 34-55 of the code. There are no adverse impacts to State Road 50, Cheney Highway, and Windover Way. See staff comment under future land use element policy 1.17.1 on page 10 for references to the rezoning traffic impact analysis and traffic study. The planned development will not create or generate traffic along local streets in residential areas or clusters outside the PD area. A variety of housing options are needed to accommodate the desires of residents, including rental apartments. Findings that do not support the proposed request. The current commercial high-intensity future land use and the regional commercial RC zoning district were approved in 2008 with a binding concept plan for commercial development. The city has less than 20% of combined commercial and industrial land use categories. The amendment will continue to reduce the cumulative acreage of non-residential land use categories in the city. The master plan could better address the planned unit development future land use element policies 1.19.1, 1.19.3, 1.19.5, 6, 7, and 10 to encourage creative approaches in housing development, types and styles, interesting streetscapes, architectural styles, and a mixture of uses. A market demand analysis, economic impact analysis, or fiscal impact analysis was not submitted to address the comprehensive plan land use amendment sprawl criterion described in section 34-23 of the code. The analysis should address the extent to which the land use amendment results in positive market, economic, and fiscal benefits of the area. The city's existing residential land use designations and approved or proposed multifamily apartment developments can accommodate the projected new population growth. The applicant did not provide specific information that demonstrates how the project protects the health, safety, and welfare to a greater extent than the standard code. Section 33-5A1 of the code states the applicant is responsible for demonstrating the project protects the health, safety, and welfare of the general public to a greater extent than would have been possible pursuant to the standard zoning districts. The conditions of approval include a list of permitted uses, a maximum of 304 residential units, height up to 2 driveways, open space and recreational amenities, and bicycle facilities. Included in the agenda is a new traffic study that was submitted June 12, 2024. The staff report does not reflect any updates that might be proposed or stated in the new traffic study. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the staff? Member Garrard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eddie, you mentioned that there's a new traffic study submitted. Is the one that was provided to us that new study?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay.
I do have one.
Okay.
There's a typo on page 120, just FYI on the address. Page 120 for the Wendover Way, it says 8825 instead of 8225, I think. But, which I'm really surprised in a document this big, there's not more typos, so congratulations on that, but
Thank you. Which line is that?
I think it's, oh, what was it? Let's see.
I see it. Thank
You
you.
see it? Okay.
Just for information purposes, Member Childs referred to the fact that this item is over 600 pages of our agenda. Okay, we'll hear from the applicant first.
Good evening. Cole Oliver for the applicant. Rossway Swan is my law firm. My address is 1901 South Harbor City Boulevard, Melbourne, Florida. First, I'm going to try to be pretty brief with a pretty complex item, as I know from a 600-page staff report. You guys had a lot of homework, and compliment to your staff, the citizens involved, and everyone on this process. First, I'd really like to thank staff for their hard work on the report. There's a lot of information in here. It's a complicated issue. And, I would say that we agree with probably 95% of their findings. We do like the opportunity to provide some supplemental information to address some of the concerns that they raised in the last section that Eddie was referencing. And then I'd like to just give a little brief history. Before I get into that, I'd like to give a little brief history of the property. So this property was annexed into the city. Do you remember what year off the top of your head? I believe it was in the 90s. It may have been the early 2000s. But in 1995, the owner of the property, Wendover Farms, Inc., donated a utility easement to the city of Titusville, where the city of Titusville, it runs along the north boundary of this property line, the south boundary of Mr. Donnell's property, and ties in the sewer force main and the reclaimed water underneath I-95 to the city's sewer plant. Later in the 2008 timeframe, a developer came in and placed this piece of land and Mr. Donnell's land under contract and came to the city with a comprehensive site plan and rezoning effort, which has resulted in where we are today with this regional commercial with the binding site plan that is referenced in the staff report. We have a copy of that old site plan. And the city's code basically states if you show a concept site plan at the hearing, that concept site plan becomes binding on the property. I know you guys know that, but just kind of for the audience so that we're all working from the same page. Nonetheless, we utilized 2008 happened, 2009 happened, Great Recession, the developer went under, the property has sat undeveloped for a number of years till today. And during that timeline, the owner of the property received a clearing permit from the city and a stormwater wetlands impact permit for the St. John's Water Management District. They donated approximately 170 acres of land to the St. John's for wetland preservation just on the west side of I-95, and on the east side of the property, or the east side of 95 on the south side of the subject property, they placed a conservation easement that is approximately 5.5 acres, something like that. I don't know the exact number, which remains there today and is protecting those wetlands in perpetuity. That conservation easement is held by the St. John's Water Management District, and it's theirs to enforce. And, that the owner of the land has to comply with it. So that property is protected in perpetuity. Now, when 2009 happened, the Great Recession, the developer who had all the property under contract went bust, and the two property owners, Mr. Donnell and the Wendover Farms, Inc., are no longer bound by the same contract, but they have this one site plan that overlies both properties. And as long as that binding site plan is there, those properties have to come in front of you guys to do any sort of development, period, to remove that site plan. And so that's one of the main reasons we're here today. What we're bringing before you is the proposed plan development. A PUD is the comp plan use, the plan development is the zoning. And that came about as a result of a series of meetings with the Wendover Farms folks back in approximately 2 years ago when this developer placed the property under contract. We met with the HOA president and a couple of representatives from Wendover Farms to show them the concept plan that we were going to, be bringing forward. In that meeting, those representatives expressed, a lot of the concerns that you're going to hear tonight, and some of them we couldn't address to their satisfaction. And they also raised a number of concerns that we took great steps to try to change. Some of those concerns were they were concerned that the residents of the apartment complex would utilize their park and they didn't want strangers coming into their neighborhood. So they redesigned the subdivision the PUD and put their own park within that PUD to accommodate their citizens. There were concerns about the apartment buildings being up close to the road and the proximity that puts to some of the other commercial properties in Wendover Way proper. They redesigned the site to move those buildings away from Wendover Farms or Wendover Way Road to provide the maximum distance they could from the single-family residences. We've agreed to keep all the lighting on site so we have no spillover, and to try to minimize noise and those types of concerns. We've agreed to increase the distance from that the principal buildings would be from the main road, and to maintain the vegetative buffer with all the existing mature vegetation that's there along Wendover Way, with the exception of the invasive species that we're required to remove by code that might be in there. But we're amenable to coming back in and replanting that undergrowth with Florida native species to try to, again, keep that screening to the maximum for that road. So that was the first meeting back in, I believe, 2022. We held a subsequent meeting in 2023, the community engagement meeting. A lot of residents were there. We had a healthy, lengthy discussion. We didn't come to agreement on a lot of the issues, but we tried to accommodate where we could. The developer felt at that point they had already taken the first bite at the apple and done the maximum they could to address the concerns that were brought up in the first meeting. Again, we've gone through the process, tried to redesign, see if we can meet their concerns. We met again with the neighborhood association or the community. I believe it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head. most of the same concerns exist. You're going to hear a lot of those tonight regarding concerns on traffic. You're going to hear concerns about drainage and wildlife and the, flooding concerns of the citizens. Our position is we agree with the staff report that we've done what we can to meet those elements of it. Moving towards the staff recommendations that was in the draft report that I have as it relates to the plan unit development and the small scale comp plan, and I'll quote the staff report. It says, consider approval of the comp plan by considering the appropriateness of residential development in the form of the plan unit development land use as it relates to, one, the location, compatibility, surrounding uses, concurrency, access management consistent with the comprehensive plan. And so 5 or 6 elements, depending on how you group them together. To address each of those in turn, I just would, again, point back to the staff report itself and the findings therein. As to the location, on page, I have a quote, a multifamily zoning behind a commercial zoning is an appropriate land use pattern when you're buffering, single family to high density. The commercial, the residential component of an apartment complex is appropriate pattern. And then, quote, development appears to be the optimal land use pattern is compatible with the surrounding area. The multifamily is an appropriate use to buffer the commercial and the single family uses and the parcel that is zoned residential manufactured housing to the southeast. That's addressing the location concern that was, in here. The next is the compatibility with the surrounding uses. And the staff report says the amendment will limit the residential density to a scale that is appropriate to the surrounding residential land uses. Goes on to state the land use arrangement will result in the land pattern that is compatible with the surrounding area. The multifamily development is not expected to generate any detriment to the public safety, welfare of the general area. The proposed multifamily could be considered a less intense use with greater compatibility to the Wendover Farms community than the regional commercial, which is zoned for, or land use for today. As to the concurrency, the staff states preliminary concurrency assessment was completed indicating available capacity for water, sewer, transportation, and parks to serve the proposed development. As to the sprawl component, which is referenced in the staff report, I quote back to the staff's language and the report is, quote, the master plan will not result in urban sprawl. And, quote, the proposed residential land use within the context of the surrounding commercial and low-density residential land use lend to a sustainable development pattern, meaning that it's not requiring additional roads to be built, additional infrastructure to be built to service this new property or this growth. The final item is the access management transportation component, which we'll hear, a lot about tonight, I presume. And, the staff says there are no adverse impacts to State Road 50 and Wendover Way. And the planned development will not create or generate traffic along local streets and residential areas or clusters outside the PD area. We agree with these findings. The next is a proposed development would generate, quote, significantly fewer daily trips than a previously proposed and approved conceptual commercial development. The traffic impact analysis, which is slightly different than the traffic study that has been provided to the staff has both, states that the downzoning results in a reduction in daily trips from 8,702 daily trips to 1,404 daily trips. So about I hate to do math in public, 80% reduction or so in the daily trips. Now, to the point that was made in the staff report on the applicant didn't provide sufficient information on how this would greater benefit the public health, safety, and welfare than the existing zoning condition. We would state that the existing zoning is what's caused this blighted area out there because no one can redevelop it without coming through with a, comp plan amendment. And that's difficult. No matter what comes before us, there's going to be people that are upset when you come in and ask for a comp plan amendment and a rezoning, which both are required to remove this, this 2008 concept plan that was maybe a good idea at the time. Things have changed since then. Next, we have worked within the ordinance that's proposed in the PD to restrict the development to provide greater building setbacks than are otherwise required in the code. We have limited the maximum building coverage that would otherwise be, lower than otherwise is allowable by the code. We've eliminated the maximum coverage area of the building lower than what is otherwise allowed in the code. We believe those are all improvements to the public health, safety, and welfare by creating more open spaces than would otherwise be required. Less impervious surface being one of the major ones. The next one is we've agreed to maintain the heights of the buildings lower than what is otherwise allowed in this zoning code. The zoning code has no theoretical height limit, as it's the regional commercial, and depending on how far you can set back your building, you can go up higher. I believe it's a 1 foot setback gets you 1 foot higher in height. I don't know the exact sliding scale on that. Again, we also believe that the proposed development's significant reduction in the traffic counts, noise, and lights associated with the same is greater than the existing zoning code would allow. And, finally, as to probably, I guess, I don't know if this is considered the welfare component or what, the proposed plan it allows the city to leave its existing sewer lines where they are. That 1995 sewer and reuse lines, that 1995 easement that was referenced early in the plan has a provision that if the city's lines conflict with any sort of planned development of the owner of the land, the city is required to come in and relocate those lines at their own expense. And that's two 24-inch pressurized lines running under I-95. This proposed plan development took steps to protect that and make sure none of the drainage structures that would have to go in and none of the buildings or any of that would conflict with those lines. So those are allowed to remain in place. I don't know what the exact cost would be to relocate those. A new project that a client did, in the south part of the county, it was I believe a mid seven figures number to put it in, not to relocate. So the final component would be, we're just touching real quickly on the section objective 1.19 of the plan unit developments that staff references. We believe that we meet a lot of these elements in here, namely, it says the City of Titusville shall establish a plan unit development concept for residential, commercial, and industrial land uses and consider other mixed-use components and land development techniques. Then it starts ticking through the different policies. We believe that we meet 119.2, the providing of pedestrian cycling facilities and urban plazas and open space, which are contained within our development. We agree with the staff's recommendation that a pedestrian bicycle unit or path be put in. We're amenable to doing that. We believe that we protect 119.4, we protect the public access to the natural amenities. Here it's the wetlands involved. The public currently has access to that property along a public right-of-way that is south of the property off of Penn Road. That access remains, and those wetlands are protected in perpetuity. So that remains. Then 119.5, it says that's encouraging creative approaches in commercial and office development. This isn't a proposed commercial or office development. Encourage a combination of housing types and styles, including single-family, two-family, multifamily developments. We are doing a type of multifamily developments. It doesn't say that it's required that you have all of those. We have a combination of building sizes. We have a combination of building bedrooms and numbers of bedrooms within those units. And this multifamily component gives people an option who don't necessarily want to live in single-family homes for whatever reasons, whether they can't afford it or they don't want the upkeep cost or they're here for a limited period of time due to the workforce needs. We believe we meet policy 119.7, encourage flexibility in design by permitted development clusterings. I mean, essentially that is what an apartment complex is. It's clustering the development and avoiding urban sprawl by getting people close together. Encourage the preservation of common open space, recreational facilities, and natural features such as woodland and wetland areas. We're doing that. We've conserved the wetland areas, have a conservation easement on them, they're protected forever. The natural features of the woodlands are along Windover Way. We'll maintain those mature species, again, with the caveat that if that mature species is an invasive one, it's gonna have to come out. But we're open to replanting that with native species to the extent it opens up any sort of visual impairment or anything like that. And then the final couple of pieces are consider the carrying capacity of the various levels of service for infrastructure and services. The staff has already provided, saying we've run our preliminary concurrency estimates and it's all there. Then policy 10 is encourage mixed-use zoning districts. Again, that's encourage a mixed-use zoning district. We're not promoting a mixed-use development, and it's not. This policy doesn't say it requires a mixed-use component. And then policy 11911, encourage development of vacant and are used urbanized area to minimize urban sprawl. We agree with the staff's finding. This is minimizing urban sprawl. We're utilizing a currently underutilized piece of property that can't be utilized under the existing zoning with that binding concept plan there. And that takes us through 11911, but that's, really all I had to bring before you tonight. I know we're gonna have a lot of public comments. I do have the developer, Bristol Development, here, and our engineer with Kimley Horn here, should y'all have any questions that are too technical in nature, because that's, again, I'm an attorney, not an engineer.
Are there any questions of the applicant? I heard you make reference to the St. John's Water Management District. Are you a member of that district?
I am. I'm currently on the governing board as the treasurer.
Is there a conflict of interest?
No, this conservation easement was put in place well before my time on the board.
Will you, if it comes up at one of their meetings, will you abstain?
I would have to recuse myself for sure.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
A question for the
Member Garrard.
representative. Your historical description of the background of the binding plan was covered by multiple landowners, so there was an aggregation of various parties' interests when the master plan was approved.
They were both under contractual arrangement with the developer at that time, yes,
So
sir.
the aggregation of various parcels of land created under that master plan a larger parcel for development in that master plan that's currently presented.
I'm sorry, I'm a little hard of
Geographically
hearing, so I'm trying to turn my head to my good
The
ear.
plan that's submitted is a smaller land area than the original binding plan.
Correct, yes, sir.
Which was made up of aggregated parcels of land combined in contract, as you put it.
Yes, they were under contract together. They never actually aggregated, but they did come before this body as a joint application, is my understanding. I was not here at the time.
And the binding plan would have run from the boundary with the road network, Highway 50 and the exit to I-95 across and inclusive of your client's parcel.
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Childs?
I have one, since you're a lawyer, you said. All right.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. So as far as the plan development shall, as according to the comp plan, I know it's staff's, I see staff's comment on here, but a plan development shall be so located with respect to arterial streets, collector streets, and other transportation facilities as to provide direct access to such PD without creating or generating traffic along local streets, residential areas, or clusters outside the PD. The staff's comment is that it won't generate, or it will not create or generate traffic along local streets and residential areas or clusters, but isn't it going onto Windover Way is the entrance from the plan development, or is it?
Yeah, that's correct. But the
Is-
key there is that
Go ahead.
that's commercial property that is surrounding Windover Way at that point. So it's local roads within residential areas. As defined by the city, Windover Way on that component is a local road, but it is a local road that is within a commercial district.
But that doesn't say that here. So you're saying, oh, local streets in a residential area. So since this is a commercial area, it doesn't apply Is that what you're saying?
That's our reading of it. And then staff that's my reading of it, staff's reading. I don't know. You can ask your staff on that one.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Grodd?
It's maybe a question for your engineer with Kimberly Horn. And I asked earlier of staff regarding the traffic study that was presented.
Sure.
And that being the most recent one.
Yes.
I noted that the analysis focuses on the intersection of Wendover Way with Highway 50, and it focuses on the intersections that traffic would leave that intersection and travel east principally to State Road 405. And it studied the intersection, I believe, of Wendover Trail at I asked Eddie that, I messed it up, I'm sorry, Challenger Boulevard. Columbia, okay. There didn't seem to be any analysis whatsoever of directional traffic leaving the site and using Wendover Way to the intersection with Wendover Trail. And I'd like to know why, as a kind of a overarching comment, it's an old saying about water will seek its path of least resistance. I'm thinking, I'm an apartment dweller and I'm trying to go out on Highway 50 the way the traffic pattern's been analyzed, but it's congested. So in not too much, I would be like water, finding my path of least resistance and using those local streets.
Sure.
And I'm interested in why the analysis didn't consider that as a potential.
Yeah, Kimberly Horn did the civil engineering. LTG did the traffic report, Lasser Transit Group. They had a conflict and couldn't be here tonight. That came up in our meeting with the citizens in the community engagement meeting. And without the technical side, which I don't have the background to speak to, but the general answer to that question is that traffic methodology was presented to and approved by the city, so that's why the study was conducted in that manner. And my understanding is it was conducted in that manner because the manner in which it shows the traffic flowing is the worst possible scenario.
That may be the question I asked, was it maybe your professional engineer can answer it since you're an attorney and you don't know that. You couldn't answer my question. And I also would ask, and I appreciate staff having the transportation expertise here, and that's a question I'll pass to either one of the experts, first with your consulting engineer, if he can help us with it.
He can try. He's not a traffic engineer.
Okay,
I'm
if he
happy for him
cannot,
to give
that's
it a
fine.
shot. But
That's fine, that's fine. Then I would turn to staff and just ask the story of my comment, adage of water seeks its path of least resistance. Would you agree that it would be highly unlikely that traffic would divert from the design and the analyses to be out to Highway 50, principally, wholly, as you said, the worst-case scenario, and that some portion of traffic would divert to ride the local streets out to the controlled intersection, which is Wendover Trail, and also the fact that most people would go shopping for goods and services, and the natural pattern would be, all due respect to the business name, Walmart. And that being said, going from Wendover Trail to Walmart's already a congested area due to the way they designed the Murphy oil. And any given day, and I go there a lot to buy fuel, you find yourself hung out in the intersection more routinely, almost consistently when the light changes. And if you add these trips, even a degree of the worst case scenario, I would think that would create a pretty bad conflict or amplify the conflict that's already there. So how's your feeling on traffic diversion that would take the local streets as opposed to 100% of the traffic at Highway 50 at Wendover Way?
Yeah, they ran what's called a transportation model. And the model, it's a complicated mathematical model that looks at trip generation and trip attractions, where people are going and how to get there. And based on the model run, the model result was that the access via Wendover Way is where the majority of the trips would go. The other routes would attract some, but those were negligible compared to what would go north on Wendover Way.
So the model would consider that if congestion occurred at PM peak and AM peak periods at Highway 50 where you have an uncontrolled intersection, and a stacking movement of these 1,400 automobile trips per day occurs, and that peak period being the critical part, the model would say that people would sit in a stacking of line waiting for people turning U-turns at the corresponding one-way directional left turn off 50, merging traffic that impedes you from being able to merge into the merge lane because you have decelerating traffic off I-95, you have accelerating traffic paralleling that under I-95, and you're going to do that with a stacking of cars because they can't merge. And the model would suggest people would naturally, like water, find the path of least resistance and take the local street.
The model does take into account the traffic movements, the congestion, and so on and so forth. It does. Again, it would show some being distributed onto those other segments as well. However, based on what was found is that those would be negligible compared to what would go north on Windover Way.
If I can just ask one further question. So in degree, use percentile, negligibility, 1%, 10%, 50% of 1,400 trips PM peak and AM peak, which is, I think, several hundred. Negligibly speaking, if those trips diverted and used the local streets, I found it interesting indeed that the intersection of a curve with a tangential road and a one-sided stop sign. And I was going through that just to kind of experience, and it was kind of interesting because if you had any volume of traffic at that particular point to get to Windover Trail, it's just absolutely not too good.
Just to clarify, the 1,400 is the daily trips during the peak hours in the 200 and some odd.
Several hundred, yes.
And so negligible for a traffic distribution point of view would be somewhere in the 2%. So, or less. So if you consider those, you're talking about 2 cars, 3 cars.
So out of 300 plus apartments, 2 cars might divert when the congestion impedes. That's the model's story.
That's the model. Yes.
I always like adages. The other adage I have is about engineers can tell you bumblebees can't fly. So I'm just a little puzzled how that really validly, I'm just not going to agree with the analysis. I'm sorry.
Well, and I think from an important point from the comp plan and rezoning perspective is that this is a down zoning. You look at it from a perspective what is currently permitted on the property with the existing zoning. And this is an existing down zoning from that. I think that's the important thing to keep in mind.
If I may, I understand, and that's why I asked the question earlier about the aggregation of property and the existing plan that's authorized. I'm not speaking of what's already allowed. It's speaking of aggregating properties, which you've broken off of.
And the traffic impact analysis looked at only those buildings that were located on the subject property before you tonight. It did not add in the trips that would have been on the extra buildings on the north piece of the property. So if the whole thing got built, it would be higher than the 8,700 number. I don't know that exact number because that would analyze because that property wasn't part of it. But.
Member Moscoso, you had your light on? Okay.
I have one follow-up.
Member
I had time to
Chavez.
think, and I have nothing against lawyers as long as they don't have anything against me. If you know what I mean. So you're saying since the commercial, it's a commercial around it, but if we rezone this, wouldn't it then be residential, that area, that immediate area is residential, and then would that make the road a local residential?
I see your point
Traffic.
there. I get it, but I believe it's still bounded by commercial on the other side of the road, which is the tourist designated where the.
So is the whole, or does just part of the road need to have commercial in order for it to not be considered local?
I don't have the answer to that. one,
Okay.
but I see your point, though.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the applicant have anyone else?
No, I think they let me
Okay.
take the slings and arrows.
Lori, do we have cards? I'm sure we do.
Yes, sir. So just so you know, there's 31 cars for 9B and 25 for 9C.
I don't think we'll be here till 2 o'clock, but maybe after 11 at least. First card.
Bruce Utzler.
Excuse me, can we get the public addresses turned up just a little bit?
Yes, we need to do that. Plus, we need to speak louder and include the applicant as to speak louder. But you need to come up and speak at the microphone to be acknowledged.
First time. So Bruce Utzler, 8038 Windover Way, lived there for 4 months, and I've seen an increase in the traffic there since we have moved in, so I definitely object.
Okay. Next card.
Sandra Combs.
Eddie, could you help her with the microphone?
Should it?
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. My name is Dr. Sandra Combs. I'm married to Bruce Utzler, and we just moved in February. We bought the property with the ambiance that we enjoy there. And I'm not sure where all of y'all live, but adding 6 4-story apartment buildings to that environment is a bummer. So I understand that the property owner wants to develop the property, but this planning has to be responsible with how it's going to impact the lives of everybody on Wendover Way. In the development of the property, there is the driveways. It shows 2 driveways, but there's not. There's only 1. And the driveway that's because the other one's for emergencies. So this main driveway is closest to that intersection of Wendover Way and Wendover Trail. So that means it's going to be a cluster, whatever you call it, right there anytime you try to get in and out of the development. It's already difficult to look backwards when you're at Wendover Trail going on to Wendover Way, looking backwards to see if there's any traffic coming. And I can't imagine that as the traffic, I believe that the traffic study is suspect in its accuracy because it doesn't address the issues that you brought up, Mr. Gerard, about the traffic at Wendover Way and Wendover Trail. And according to the report, it says that there's not going to be any modification of the streets, roads, stop signs, anything. There's nothing budgeted to take care of that were it a problem.
Thank you. Next card, Lori.
Penny Tidwell.
Yeah, please.
Penny Tidwell, 3441 Owlswood Way. Even before this apartment, I'm surprised we haven't had a fatality at 50 in Wendover because of having the issue with the way they come off 95 onto 50, trying to get over into the lane to turn around to go back westbound on 50. You almost, in my belief, you'd have to hire a full-time police officer just to write accident reports there because it's going to be nothing but chaos. The streets cannot, our infrastructure, I don't believe, is ready to handle it. I've had issues in the past couple of weeks. I haven't had enough pressure in my water lines to fill up my toilets because the water's so weak. Now you bring 300 more units, that's going to take more water off of Titusville. Just since we've had this rain in the last weeks, I see water sitting in the culverts in the front yard. We're not prepared to handle this mass of extra people around us. like you said, go into Walmart. Walmart can't handle the people we've got and add another 400 people. We need to think real long and real hard. I understand we can't avoid growth, but we got to think about what kind of growth we can handle and if our infrastructure's here to take care of it or not. And I do definitely object to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Glenn Buckla. Michael McAdams.
I think he's the,
Thank you.
got it.
Comprehensive plan status. Section 163.3177, Florida statutes provides in part, comprehensive plan shall provide the principles, guidelines, standards, strategies for orderly and balanced future economic, social, physical, environmental, and fiscal development of the area that reflects community commitments to implement the plan and its elements. These principles and strategies shall guide future plan and its elements. In the decisions made in a consistent manner and shall contain programs and activities to ensure comprehensive plans are implemented. And Section 162.3161 of the Florida statutes, also known as the Community Planning Act, it is the intent of this act that adopted comprehensive plans shall have the legal status set out in this act and that no public or private development shall be permitted except in conformity with comprehensive plans or elements or portions thereof prepared and adopted in conformity with this act. This is an objective in our comprehensive plan. Flu Objective 1.9, the City of Titusville shall provide for appropriate and adequate land for commercial land uses through the designation of commercial high-intensity and commercial low-intensity land use designations on the future land use map. Well, here we have the commercial high-intensity consistent with the comprehensive plan requesting to go bye-bye. The staff comments on page 5 in the staff report, page 101 in your agenda packet, agrees and reads, the existing commercial high-intensity on the subject property is intended to serve the city and regional commercial needs. The existing future land use is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan in that it encourages clustering of commercial uses along the commercial segment of Cheney Highway and Interstate 95. Pages 6, 8, 15, and 16 of the staff report included in your agenda package state the existing commercial high-intensity land use and regional commercial zoning is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and are correct. Let's keep the current clusters of commercial businesses together instead of creating clusters of cars where the police department, city code clearly restricts it, along with local roads like Windover Way. Thank you very much.
Next card, please.
Michael McAdams.
Hello. I live about as far into Windover as you can get. It's horseshoe shaped, and I live up on the toe end of it on
Excuse me, sir, can you
Windover
state your
Way.
name and your address, please?
I'm sorry?
Your name and address?
Michael McAdams, 2926 Morning Dove Way.
Thank you.
I've lived there for 23 years. It's a great neighborhood. We have a lot of people that are in and out of our neighborhood just looking, which I did a long time before I moved there. And it's just become crazy. The traffic's not going to handle this many people living at the end of the road. As people have said before, getting out on Highway 50 now is one right turn. If you want to go west, you have to go to 407 Light and make a U-turn, or they have a little turn into Lowe's parking lot at Starbucks there that you can make a U-turn. There will be a lot of that. The traffic is unbelievable since I moved in there. I wait. And it's crazy. You have people coming in from the west, from Orlando. You have people coming off I-95 north and south. The lights don't handle it. I've seen it backed up going under I-95 west. almost back to 405 and 407. It just can't deal with it. My water pressure at the end of Wendover Farms is, like the lady was saying, almost non-existent sometimes. We have the city coming out and flushing our water lines constantly because of the quality of our water. We are at the end of the line in Titusville, I understand, and Cocoa. It's just unbelievable. We can't, in an emergency, we would never be able to deal with getting people out of there. If there was a fire in Wendover Farms, and we have a lot of woodlands out there, a lot of woods that we like, and people had to get out of there, that end would be totally blocked going out of there. 3 ways in. Fire station on 405, Highway 50, and Wendover Trail. 23 years, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Can't see how this can be allowed to go. I really can't.
Thank you. Next card, Lori.
Cynthia Hamsley.
My name is Cynthia Hamsley. My address is 8083 Wendover Way. So I'm relatively close to where all this is going to happen. I am against it. Historically, for those of you, I moved into the neighborhood in 2010. The intersection at Highway 50 has already been redone once. I can testify that I wrote several accidents from that intersection because it used to not be a right turn only, and people were allowed to cross the road. It was a dangerous intersection then. It did get a little better when they made everybody start taking the right turn as far as accidents have been concerned and claims from that particular intersection. But I go in and out of our neighborhood 6 times a day. And I have kids. The path that you're talking about as far as reducing anything, there's already traffic at the gas station that causes it to back up, and then all it's going to do is hinder and cause a bigger cluster there at the intersection. My second concern is the water drainage. Every year since I've lived at my house, and every part of Wendover, drive through it, and it's a wetland. I mean, that's documented. We're not all in a flood zone. My property is not deemed a flood zone, but the water drainage is part of my biggest concern because that property, that canal that goes down behind my property, it gets the drainage from that area. And so that canal that goes down behind our properties, all that water comes in. Just about every year when you have a hurricane season, when you open my back door, I have a lake. My neighbor's house is part of the lake, and so is the other neighbor's part of the lake. That doesn't even count the water drainage problem we have on the main road. I get it front and back. The problems that we've had with the water drainage on the main road, I can attest that there are several residents that are having to redo all their culverts because of the water wash that's going through because of the amount of water that we already have. So those are my 2 concerns. I appreciate it, but I'm against it.
Thank you. Next card, Lori.
Jacqueline Leader.
My name is Jacqueline Leader. I live at 7762 Wendover Way, and she really scared me. But I know that intersection's terrible, and I don't think that it's going to be good to have this many cars trying to get around. I have the same problem as everybody else getting around that 50, and there should not be planning to have that in and out into Wendover. It's just not a good idea. And then the attorneys reminded us about all the lighting. I hadn't even thought about that. all of the amount of light and I mean, everything everybody said has been bad. So I'm definitely against this.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Next card.
Rebecca Karan.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Kern, and I live at Foxwood Drive, 3491. And can I yield my time?
Can you what?
Give my time to Connie?
No, we'll not get in the habit of that. If she needs extra time, we'll consider it.
Okay. I disapprove for the same reason that everybody's been stating.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Next card, please.
Tom Karan.
Tom Kern, 3491 Foxwood Drive. I agree that I don't agree with the changes that are being brought up. So, yeah, traffic is a big one. The water, water pressure, every time they clean a fire hydrant out, the water pressure is gone, period. No matter where you're at in Windover Farms. But the traffic going out on Highway 50 right now is atrocious. The traffic comes out of the, off of I-95 on the yield side. By the time the cars come out of there, the lights change and come out of under the bridge from I-95, and you can't get out. It's a mad dash even to get out on the Highway 50. And you don't think that 300 homes are going to have traffic going up Windover Trail into Walmart and Kohl's and Target and the gas stations that are over there? It's ludicrous. The traffic is horrible. I don't know what you're going to do about it, but that's got to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
Carla Henn.
Carla Henn, address is 7323 Windover Way. I am totally opposed to this. First of all, the traffic. They didn't even approach the fact that if they're getting out on Windover Way and they work in Orlando, it's not going to happen. They got to go the other way to get to a light, to go through 5 lights. It's terrible. And the water is another issue. And that's it. Thank you.
Next card, please.
Terry Henn.
Terry Henn, 7323 Wendover Way. We've been here since 2006. I first went through Wendover in 1982. A coworker had built the house that we are now living in. I was with an architectural firm in Miami, Alfred Browning Parker Architects Chartered. And I was on a lot of projects, but this, I would really urge you all to, if you're not familiar with this area here, just try to picture this development and how it would affect this neighborhood and the original concept of the neighborhood. It just seems like I can't understand why the owner would even let this happen. But yeah, this is just, Wendover Way is almost like I-95 to some of the people that drive through there. There's a 25 mile an hour, 35 at the other end, but it's dangerous. Sometimes I worry just going out to get my mail, but no, I'm totally opposed to this, and I urge you all to, if you haven't been there, just visit that area and try to imagine how this would affect the people that live there for that reason. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next card.
Carolyn Radfield.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Padfield, 8214 Windover Way. I'm across the street from the projected project. I completely disagree with this. We tried to fight Home Depot in the back of us. Didn't work, as you can see. It went up. So did the lights, so did the traffic, so did the noise, the constant beeping of the tractors going backwards. The traffic on Windover Way, we bought in '05, has quadrupled. We have had, I retired from the Keys to move into my house and retire because it was quaint, it was country-like, it was quiet. It's not gonna be quiet, it's not gonna be quaint, I won't be able to sell my property, it's gonna depreciate with this monstrosity going across the street. Not even to mention the emergency services trying to get in and out of there. Right now, when we were traveling back and forth, I would have a police report in my mailbox because there was an accident on my front yard. It took out the bridge, the mailbox, car parts on the front lawn. It was just left a huge ditch in the front yard. It's going to get worse. We can't get out of our driveway right now to go left or right onto Windover Trail. It's very, very dangerous. It's only going to get worse. This is not an appropriate project for Windover Way or Windover Farms. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next card.
Desiree Wimmer.
My name is Desiree Weimer. I live at 7205 Morning Dove Court. So I'm halfway in the middle of Windover, and I will tell you from personal experience, I take the path of least resistance, like you were saying with water. I have kids. I leave the neighborhood multiple times a day. I have tried every entrance and exit of Windover. That specific one onto 50 is dangerous. I won't take it. I've sat there for 10, 15 minutes just as cars sped by in the morning for school. The flooding has gotten worse. I've lived there 8 years. I've seen neighbors post about how they're taking kayaks to their mailbox. And also the water pressure. There are days when I'm at home where one of our toilets won't even flush because of the water pressure. So I'm against it.
Thank you. Next.
Brandon Hollis.
Hello, my name is Brandon Hollis. I live at 2877 Morning Dove Way, and I've lived there since 2006. Windover Way is a 6 to 7 mile U-shaped drive from one entrance to the other, and I live at the 3 miles back from either entrance. It's winding, there's no sidewalk, so we have quite a few walkers and bikers on the road daily. And there are several blind driveways around curves. It is self-evident the long-term plan of the winding Windover Way Road was intended to only accommodate the neighborhood residential traffic. Thank you.
Next card.
Abby Hollis.
Hi, I'm Abby Hollis, married to him, 2877 Morning Dove Way. We are back in the very back U of the neighborhood. The traffic situation, as you guys know, at 50 and Windover Way is atrocious. Even just coming home from Walmart on Windover Trail, as the First Lady said, you have to literally look behind you to see if there's traffic coming. So in the 4:30 to 5:30 range of the day, you have to really pay close attention because people are sailing along there, coming home from work, coming off 95, rolling through there. And so I just am very concerned about the traffic, and especially for the neighbors that live right in that area. So thank you for taking time to listen to us.
Next card, please.
Sandra Klinger.
That's okay, yeah.
And you got it all, I think, via email, so you should have it all electronically if you want to look at it that way.
This is just a summary. This is just a condensed version of the official objection letter we sent.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sandra Klinger, 2680 Bobcat Trail. First, I want to address one of the question you raised about Wendover Way to the right and Wendover Trail. Why it was not included in the model is it is outside of the boundary area they included in the model. So if it was in the boundary area, it would have been assessed, but it was not. Wendover has voiced this pretty much consistent objections from the beginning for this proposed project. First of all, as you all have read the description of LDR 33-5 1B that talks about the standards for PD shall be so located with respect to arterial streets, collector streets, other transportation, to provide direct access to the PD without creating or generating traffic along local streets and residential areas. There is no way you can define Wendover Way as not a residential area. Wendover Way was built as part of the plat for Wendover Farms subdivision. It is internal to our subdivision plat. The applicant proposes this direct access onto Wendover Way. It is a local road. It is defined in the city's code as a local road. Wendover Way itself has, a lot of it has a width of 80 foot, which accommodates the swales for drainage for the community. However, the northwestern boundary of the Bristol property, from that point to State Road 50, that right-of-way width shrinks to 60 feet. If you look at the city's definition for a collector road, the city requires a minimum of 90 feet. So it doesn't meet any of the city's definitions for anything other than a local road. The applicant, something that wasn't provided in your report, is the applicant has an existing easement across the commercial property to its north to State Road 50. It's a 66-foot wide easement that's provided in the document we sent to you. The applicant did note this to the city when they submitted their application, that that easement existed and it could be used if necessary. There is also, that easement actually connects to an existing concrete driveway that was in place from when the property was used historically here as a truck stop. I included in our submittal documents aerial imagery showing the property in use when it was used as a truck stop, and I also provided current pictures showing the concrete entryway still exists today. The applicant could have chosen to locate the direct PD access via their easement, but they did not. There is a historically established commercial driveway there. It has existed for a long time. The Bristol traffic study excluded the very portions of Wendover Way that would allow the...
How much extra time do you need?
Just a minute, if even that.
Okay, anybody object to giving her 1 minute? Okay, go ahead.
Part of the PD review criteria for external compatibility requires that the proposed development shall not impact the quality of life for any adjacent residential uses. Negative impacts include decreased property value and substantial increase in noise or traffic. If you don't include the segment of the road that is turning right into Wendover Farms and Wendover Trail, you won't find any impacts to residential areas because you're not looking for those impacts. To properly assess this, they had to consider that cars leaving that development would turn right. Their driveway has aprons going both directions. They know cars leaving that driveway will turn right. If you look at the master plan, the master plan has aprons turning right and left. Why doesn't the traffic study include that? So ultimately what we ask is that you deny 3322 and its associated rezoning master plan.
Thank you. Next card.
Connie Milton.
You might as well stay up here.
First, Connie Milton, before my time starts, are we going to have 3 minutes to speak on item C? Because we have B and C.
Yes.
Okay. Sandy talked about, and I'm going to reiterate some more on this map here, this survey. It's actually a survey of Mr. Donald's, George Donald's property. This 60-foot wide portion of Wendover Way, it reduces to 60 feet here. Yeah, there's 80 feet along the development's property, but it's only 60 feet from here all the way to 50. This 66-foot wide right-of-way was put in place in 1998 by the current owner of this property that's being developed. It was signed by Mr. Donald. It was signed by Wendover, Inc. Cole Oliver's father-in-law, I believe, is the principal in Wendover, Inc. So that was signed. Everybody knows about it. And that would provide access from this property up to 50. And like Sandy mentioned, there's already concrete driveway going over into this 66-foot wide right-of-way from this property, from that gas station. So it's already a precedent where you have in and out right here. There's no need to put any access onto Wendover Way. None whatsoever. This provides the access required for this development. The other thing is a 4-story apartment complex is not compatible with Wendover Farms properties that are an average of 1.5 units per acre. A 4-story, there's trees in all of state of Florida will not grow that high. So maybe a 2-story apartments, maybe 3, but certainly not 4-story. Wendover Farms has 630 homes in Wendover right now. This will add another 300 and something? Really? That just 50% again on top of what Wendover has right now. That's a no-go for us as well. As far as the environmental, there's over 5 acres of environmental supposedly going to conservation. But what this developer is requesting is that 5.5, almost 6 acres of environmental be included in the development calculations so that it increases the amount of units they can put on that property. Now, when that 5+ acres, almost 6 acres of environmental is absorbed into a PD, there's nobody watching it. As time goes on, oh, well, we've got to put something over there. We'll build another building, or whatever's going to happen. And when you got folks sitting on the County Environmental Commission that says, oh, yeah, sure, we'll just check that box. It's okay to develop on that 6 acres, okay, because it's internal to a PD. This should not happen. We are totally against this. You should not approve this at all. Now, there's some more points that probably need to be made, but you get the picture. Thank you.
Next card.
Lindsay Grizzle.
Lindsay Grizzle, and I'm at 2605 Gator Trail in the middle of Wendover, so I access both ends of Wendover frequently. I just wanted to point out this. I know we've talked about the different emissions from the traffic study, but I made a visual for it. And basically the red is the areas that were not included in the traffic study. So everything coming out of Bristol, taking a right and going up Wendover Trail was not included. The impact on Wendover Trail and 405 was not included. This is a major concern right here. When I take my daughter to Astronaut and I have to come out here, do this U-turn. Sometimes if I can't get across the 3 lanes of traffic, this lane, the middle lane, and the turn lane, then I have to come down to 405 and make a U-turn there. So my other option would be to come out of Wendover and go down Wendover Trail, hit this light, and come to hit 95. So it's not just people going to Orlando, right? I know that was something that was presented to us initially, like these are people that are going to be working and, coming temporarily to the apartment complex, but it's not just going back to Orlando. It's going if you get on 95 North or 95 South as well. So that's that. I also want to point out the traffic addendum. So we had the original traffic study that we looked at that was presented by or given to us by Bristol. Then there was an addendum that was the impact, I think Mr. Oliver said, the impact analysis, and that was on April 9th. And of 2023, and it's called the Technical Memorandum. And this was put together as a supplement to kind of cherry pick the original traffic study points out. And it was, okay, I'll just read. This was used to create a false narrative to distract from the non-compliant issues with the Bristol PD proposed multifamily development as submitted, depicted on their master plan. Now, the traffic study addendum compares the applicant's proposed PD high-density multifamily trip generations and compares that to the impact of a 2008, which is 16 years old, regional commercial zoning site plan for a large square, that was the aggregated group of properties put together. So by saying that the impact is going to be less with the development, the proposed development compared to the commercial development that they used, that they're comparing it to, is not just the proper or the traffic coming out from this piece of commercial property. It includes the rest of the originally platted or originally combined development.
Do you need extra time?
1 minute, if that.
Okay, you have an extra minute.
Thank you. So with the regional commercial, they're required to have at least 200 feet of acreage on a collector road. And by doing that, onto the road. So by combining the original aggregated group of properties into that traffic study, that's not currently what would be coming out of a commercial property for that piece of property, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
Cynthia Taylor.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Taylor and I live at 8158 Wendover Way. And I am against it. I've been there since 1987. Bristol Development's original application requested a land use change from the current commercial high intensity and conservation to high density residential. High density residential, however, posed a significant issue, an issue that is currently a highly litigated issue between the city and another neighborhood in town that you are all familiar with. A high-density residential development requires access onto an arterial road or a collector road, not a local or public road. So they switched to PD zoning. PD zoning also high-density development, land development regulations, section 28-307, multifamily high-density residential R3 zoning standards and city's comprehensive plan policy 1.14.6 says these developments shall be located adjacent to at least a collector or arterial street unless the property is located along the following local road, which already has a multifamily development pattern and is capable of supporting higher density. Rock Pit Road from Tropic Street to South Street. Wendover Way is a local road that is not Rock Pit Road. To avoid this blatant barrier, Bristol changed their application to planned unit development land use instead. Just because their requested change from high-density residential to planned unit development does not change the fact that Bristol is still a multi-family, high-density residential development, and the traffic generated should not impact local streets. Since they requested the modification on their application, the site plans have no significant change to justify the need for a planned unit development over the initial high-density residential request. This request is still a high-density residential. It looks the same as R3, with no mixed land use options, proposed such as including a commercial component or even a variety of housing types on the property to support PD request.
Developments in PD zoning also require direct access onto arterial or collector roadways in Titusville, LDR Section 33-5A2. The Bristol PD property has an existing 66-foot wide easement to an existing driveway onto State Road 50, which would give them direct access and be in compliance with the city's LDRs, but they are choosing non-compliance. Please deny SSA 3-2022 as currently depicted in the master plan. And I've also been at Wendover since 1987, and the flooding has gotten consistently worse. The water, especially during hurricane season or the rainy season.
Thank you. Next card.
Kevin Kohler.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Kaler, live at 2865 Morning Dove Way. If you'd look at the reference page 15 of the staff report, PD policy and the comprehensive plan indicates the existing zoning, if deemed consistent with the comprehensive plan, shall be presumed correct unless substantial change in the area has occurred since the original zoning. The area zoning districts were established from 1993 to 2008 with no changes for the past 26 years. There have been no substantial change to warrant a change of zoning for the property of 8225 Wendover Way. Staff reports suggest this, stating the existing RC zoning is intended to serve the city and regional commercial needs. The existing zoning is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan in that it encourages clustering of the commercial uses along the commercial segment of Cheney Highway, SR 50, and I-95. The current commercial zoning ordinances include several conditions to a specific commercial development, including a binding concept plan, a requirement that a development agreement is submitted, and other conditions related to the wetland preservation. The binding concept plan includes a commercial property immediately to the north. The residents of Wendover bought their homes knowing the existing zoning districts. The staff reports indicates the existing zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and there have been no substantial changes in the area for decades. We ask that you deny SAA 3-2022, keep our city's well-established zoning patterns in the area deemed consistent while supporting the maintenance of commercially zoned properties. And if you would also refer to page 27, 1.4 of the zoning review criteria requires you to look at the environmental impact of the proposed rezoning. The applicant is requesting to take the current 5.52 acres of conservation wetland, do away with the current protective zoning, land use, open space, recreation, conservation, and incorporate it into the bulk planned unit development land use instead. They indicate they are not planning to they are not planning to retain the wetland. Why are they requesting to rezone it into planned development? The adjacent property to the south and east are currently conservation, open space, and recreation, and this piece of 8225 Wendover Way should remain protected as conservation or OR. The staff reports indicates an existing wetland located in the southwest portion of the site is currently located within a conservation easement. The conservation areas will be owned and maintained by the owner based on best management practices. Well, what constitutes best management practices for development when maintaining a wetland? If this portion of the property is rezoned from conservation/OR to PD, now it will remove the public's ability to be notified if there is ever proposed change to the wetland portion of the property, and a simple administration move prompted by the property owner to the St. Johns River Water Management District could result in mitigation. And just to note, Bristol's attorney, Cole Oliver, is on the board of the St. John Rivers Water Management. It does seem like an administrative proposal for mitigating this portion of the wetlands would be easy feat for Bristol. Please deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card.
Dale Kohler.
Dale Kaler, 2865 Morning Dove Way.
Could you move the mic
Sure.
down? Thank
Because
you.
I'm short. Dale Kaler, 2865 Morning Dove Way. I really object to this. I don't see the need for 304 apartment complexes up there. When we had the meeting, we asked them about parking. How big of a parking lot are you going to have? Well, each place is going to have 1.4 spaces for cars. I don't know about y'all, but we have 3 cars in our driveway, and the lawyer's response was, well, it's for a mother and 2 children. there's not a mother and two children that's not going to have by themselves in supposedly luxury apartments. I definitely object. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
Ron Yule.
Hi, Ron Ball, 6535 Wendover Way. I wanted to address the loss of commercial properties or commercial land use. Titusville has made great strides in accommodating the housing crisis. Now we must keep our commercially zoned properties for commercial development. Many have expressed concern about the lack of commercial property and have fought to protect it. Commercial property in our city is needed to match the influx of population moving to Titusville. We need more local businesses to generate jobs and incomes, as well as provide places for us to shop and eat and services that we need. The staff report for Bristol does not support the proposed request for changing the commercial to residential. On page 95 in your agenda packet, staff indicates the current commercial high-intensity future land use and the regional commercial zoning district were approved in 2008 after a binding concept plan for commercial development. The city has less than 20% of combined commercial and industrial land use categories. This amendment will continue to reduce the cumulative acreage of non-residential land use categories in the city. And then on page 5 in the staff report, based on the most recent reports, the existing vacant residential land use designations have more than enough vested and available residential units to accommodate growth projections to 2030. There are 6 rental apartment developments currently in site plan review or under construction. The city currently has less than 20% of combined commercial and industrial land use categories, and this amendment will continue to reduce that amount. Please deny SSA 3-2022 as it'll further reduce Titusville's ability to develop and sustain businesses where we can work and shop locally. And also, I just wanted to briefly comment on the traffic study that was submitted a week ago. I don't know that anybody in our group has had a chance to look at it to make a comment. That's kind of a late submittal when the meeting is today. Okay, thank you.
Next card.
Pamela Malsbury.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Malsbury, and I live at 7406 Wendover Way. And what I would like to talk to you about today is the building height and the surrounding vegetation. So with the proposed plan of the development land use site, it shows that there will be 6 apartment buildings, 4 stories high to a maximum of 50 feet. There is no precedent for a 4-story building east of 95 until you come to riverfront property miles away. There's not a compatible, this is not compatible with surrounding areas, and the local vegetation does not provide enough screen or barrier from the buildings of this potential height of 50 foot. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. This proposal is incompatible with residential development on the east side of 95 in that area, particularly adjacent to the large lot rural residential homes. 1 full story taller than any of the trees can even provide shield from the noise and the light. Per the September 16th, 2021 Atlantic Environmental Assessment on Bristol property, and that's on page 159 in your agenda package. And that would be this, and I'm going to try to do it. The orange area is 1.64 acres. Orange on the map on the property is dominated by pines, and that's this right here. by pines, cabbage palm, Brazilian peppers, salt palmettos, gallberry, and muscadine grapes. 2.53 acres, which is the blue property right in here, is man-made stormwater ponds, and 0.99 acres, which is the yellow. Get the orange was the, sorry, it's the yellow. Is considered wetlands and vegetation of cattails and sawgrass and scattered salt bushes, which generally do not reach over 10 feet. 5.89 acres is considered mixed wetland and hardwood. Section 33-8 on the code states negative impact can include any substantial increase in noise and traffic. There will be an increase, road noise. Any surface Google search on traffic noise and property values show that there is an inverse relationship to decimals increase value, and it decreases the value of the property.
How much more time do you need?
I'm sorry?
How much more time do you need?
Just a few more little points, and they're,
How about a
it's
minute?
very short.
1 minute?
I'm sorry.
1 minute?
Yeah, just, well, we bought our home on a local road. Is 1 minute enough? 1 minute is enough, I'm sorry, thank you. We bought our homes on a local road which has limited traffic and related noise. Traffic is not an issue for us currently. What we now, a quiet rural area with only neighborhood traffic, will bombard with through traffic with no chance of vegetation barrier blocking the 6 buildings 50 feet high. And I'm just going to urge you to deny the SSA 3/2022, as this large and unconcurrent development will certainly impact the amount of noise, light pollution affecting quiet Wendover ways. And I will say, I love laying on my back porch, looking up at the stars and all the stuff that's out there. And if I lived closer to this development, I would not be able to see what I can see today. So I thank you for the extra minute and the extra time.
Thank you. Next card.
Jeremy Gibson.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Gibson. I live at 8222 Wendover Way, so I'm the first house closest to the property. Information I'm going to give is most likely off the old traffic study, so just bear with that. So I don't believe you have been provided with the actual traffic study, which the city planning team is using to recommend development. The staff report clearly states on pages 10 to 17 of their report that the planned development will not create or generate traffic along local streets in residential areas or clusters outside the PD area. In reference to the traffic impact analysis and the traffic study, but the traffic impact analysis and traffic study does not even mention, yet alone analyze over half of the potential affected road segments. So you're being presented with a pretty impactful conclusion drawn from faulty data collection, resulting in a biased recommendation. The traffic figures show the number of trips calculated at the intersect of the project driveway and Wendover Way during AM and PM peak hours. The legend shows that the 2025 total background, or in case the current traffic trips are added to the projected trips to equal the 2025 total build-out traffic trips and total projected trips if the development were to be built. The study indicates that during peak AM hours, there are 0 proposed trips when taking a right turn out of the projected driveway, and there's 0 proposed trips when taking a left turn into the projected driveway. Similar during the PM hours, the 0 proposed trips when taking a right turn out, and then also 0 proposed trips when taking a left turn into the projected driveway. This assumes that there will be no generated traffic at all coming to or from Bristol to Wendover Way or in out of Wendover Trail during peak hours. No vehicles from 304 units apartment complex will drive towards the Home Depot, Walmart, Marshalls, Wendy's, Burger King, Target from 405 or Wendover Trail entrance. Sure, let this recommended development using only 50% of the information that should have been presented to you. Let's analyze half the surrounding roads segments and omit the other half. Wendover is not a collector or arterial road, so this PD high-density residential development should not be permitted to access onto Wendover Way in the first place. It is the applicant's responsibility to provide evidence proving they were not to create any negative impact on adjacent residential areas for traffic, noise, and quality of life. They have not done so. Just talking from personal, well, I'm good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Next card.
Glenda Rowe.
Good evening, Glenda Rowe, 8201 Wendover Way. The Bristol Development Plan Development Application SSA 3-2022 proposes that residents from over 304 units leave their apartments and drive onto Wendover Way. The lot on 8225 Wendover Way is an empty commercial property lot currently generating no traffic. Section 35-35A2 of the Planned Development Standards states a planned development shall be so located with respect to arterial streets, collector streets, and other transportation facilities as to provide direct access to such PD without creating or generating traffic along local streets in residential areas or clusters outside of the PD. Wendover is not an arterial or collector street. It's a local neighborhood way. In addition of the proposed 304 Bristol units is about 120% increase from the current number of homes currently in Wendover who access the exits on a daily basis. As we can all agree, we drive the route which is most convenient for us. This means to avoid the increasingly horrible 95 and 50 traffic, the apartment residents will likely turn right on Wendover Way and drive 0.19 miles, then take a 35-degree blind left turn on Wendover Trail towards Walmart and the 405 intersection. This route was not even considered, measured in the Bristol traffic study, approving the development is crazy. From the proposed Bristol driveway to Wendover Trail, it's only 0.19 miles. I know for a fact that vehicles from 304 units, or let's say even half of that unit, those unit residents, or 152 units, will turn right out of Bristol onto Wendover Way. Wendover Farms and Trail will be consistently backed up, and it will not only be inconvenient but dangerous for our neighborhood and will certainly cause a cluster right in front of our homes, which is prohibited by your regulations. The project is in violation of Section 33-35 for planned development standards, and I ask you to please deny the rezoning and land change for SSA 3-2022, which will surely generate high levels of traffic and cluster in front of our homes. I have a personal comment with all of this. As I said, we live at 8201 Wendover Way, excuse me, which is right beside of the airfield. It will be right beside the Bristol development. My husband and I will frequently sit out on the front porch and we watch car after car after car after car, all this traffic coming down Wendover Way from 50. They go from 50, Wendover Way, and then they make that turn to Wendover Trail when they could have stayed on 50 to go to 405. Why they do that, we don't know. We have seen countless of near accidents at that intersection. So we ask you, please deny this.
Okay, thank you. Lori, how many more cards do we have?
Seven.
Okay, at the end of these 7 cards, I'm going to call for a 10-minute break. Next card.
Frank Rowe.
Frank Rowe, 8201 Windover Way. As my wife said, we live right next door. So as we look out our door, our windows, we'll be seeing the lights that are not shielded by those trees. I want to tell you, I really appreciate your common sense questions, the ones that are being reflected by the residents of Windover tonight. Page 23 and 24 of Bristol's ridiculous traffic study concludes that at the project's driveway, a northbound left turn lane is not required due to 0 anticipated left turning vehicles entering the development. So nobody's going to come from Windover Trail to turn into development. A southbound right turn lane is not warranted under build-out conditions. This means that all the cars entering and exiting Bristol's 678 new residents will turn directly off or onto Windover Way without a turn lane. And all of the 678 residents will only be coming from State Road 50 entrance. And 0 people will ever use Windover Trail to get to Walmart, to get to Target, get to Five Below, or anything else over there, and take the left turn entering development. Really? Sections 33 and 35 through 35, A2 of the Plan Development Standards states, a plan development shall not be so located with respect to arterial streets, collector streets, and other transportation facilities as to provide direct access to such PD without creating or generating traffic along local streets in residential areas or clusters outside of the PD. First of all, the subject property already, as has been pointed out, has a city-approved access onto State Road 50, a collector road. This is where the access points should be on their site plan instead of on the Windover Way, a local road. Secondly, let's say you decide to throw policy out the door. There are an estimated 340 Windover lot owners or 678 adult residents or more, half of Windover farms that use this road segment to enter and exit the neighborhood, policy or no policy. The addition of 354 Bristol units will create significant backups and clusters onto Windover Way in front of homes, especially if there are no turn lanes to enter the development. The staff report, page 10, in the staff report, page 10 of the staff report says the traffic study did not recommend a southbound right turn lane. They failed to mention that the traffic study also does not recommend a northbound left turn lane, and states clearly there is no significant impact on Windover Way. Well, how can the city planners come to this conclusion when the traffic study only evaluated half of the roadways that will be affected by the development?
How much more time do you need?
Less than a minute.
Okay.
No significant impacts on Windover Way. This is not a joke to us, and you shouldn't stand for the attempt to manipulate critical data from a Tennessee developer's benefit to change a zoning on a property that is already consistent with the comprehensive plan and put residents of a longstanding established community at risk. I would like to invite all of you to come sit on my front porch and watch this traffic comes through the neighborhood. Comes right across in front of our house, does as my wife says, doesn't even go into development. Comes from 50 over to 405 to get to Walmart, to get to Target. There's 18-wheelers that transverse that road to go deliver to Home Depot, Target, and into Walmart. It is congested. And on the weekends, we get these clusters of 30 or 40 bikes that come flying through our neighborhood. They think it's fun to take the zigzags through our neighborhood. And they're doing in excess of 60 miles an hour going through there. So this is not a good idea. It's not even a good idea for the people of Bristol. It also endangers their lives.
Next card.
Sue Langen.
Hi, I'm Sue Langen, 7990 Windover Way. The Titusville Land Development Regulations in regard to planned development, Section 33-6A4 states, maximum building height Building height must comply with any design standards or other plans or policies provided for in the area of the development, or must be compatible with the surrounding existing development patterns in the area. Bristol site plan shows 6 apartment buildings that are 4 stories, 50 feet high, 2 to 3 stories higher than adjacent properties, and 1 full story higher than vegetation could possibly shield. There is not a precedent for this building height in Titusville east of I-95 until you reach the riverfront developments. The proposed development is not compatible with the surrounding existing development patterns. See page 39 of your agenda packet under surrounding property information. There are no developments to the south of the property. The area south of the property is conservation, open recreational, and includes a large pond. South of this pond is the Windover residence homes on Foxwood Drive. To the east of the property are all single-family, over 1 acre Windover Farms properties established in the 1980s. Directly adjacent is a field off of Penrod Road, used for model airplane flying, Moonport modelers. This field creates no visual or sound blockage from the proposed 4-story development. Directly adjacent to the west of the property is Interstate 95. Some hotel buildings to the west of 95 are 4 or more stories. However, there are no adjacent residential homes to these buildings. To the north and northwest of the property, there are no buildings more than 2 stories. These include the 1-story abandoned gas station and field, directly adjacent, 2 single-family Windover homes, directly adjacent, 1-story gas stations, the Shell, BP, Chevron, Circle K, restaurants, Dunkin' Donuts, and Starbucks, 2-story hotel Best Western, and further down, the Ramada. Please deny SSA 3-2022 for this and many other reasons laid out before you. We are not opposed to apartments being developed on the property. However, the proposed height of 4 stories and the density of 11.7 units per acre is not compatible with the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card, please.
James Strobel.
Good evening. My name's James Strobel. I live at 8190 Windover Way. My driveway literally ends at the intersection of Windover Way and Windover Trail. Right here. That's my driveway, right at that intersection. So unfortunately, I can comment firsthand on the traffic at that intersection. I work in Research Park over by UCF. So when I leave to go to work in the mornings, I go down Windover Way, I turn at the Circle K, I make the U-turn by the Starbucks, I head west. It's the easiest thing to do. It's at least time consuming. If I go to Home Depot, Walmart, Target, if I have to run down to Coco or Sharps, I will go out towards Windover Trail. There's absolutely no reason for me to believe, or anybody in this room to believe, anybody who lives in there is going to do the exact same thing. I mean, I can't imagine anybody in this room possibly believes that traffic study. I can't believe that lawyer believes it. I can't believe the engineer himself believe it. It's absurd. It's going to increase traffic tremendously. I moved into that house in 1997. I moved there because I wanted a place that was secluded, a little bit of privacy. Now my driveway literally will face this atrocity should you approve it. The light pollution in itself is going to be extremely unfortunate, not to mention just the increase in the volume of traffic. So I implore you to please deny this just on the pure grounds that it's absurd. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next card.
Elizabeth Parker.
Elizabeth Parker, 3446 Trevino Circle. I actually don't live in Windover Way. However, I see what's going on across the city, and this is no different than a lot of the other applications that are coming through. I have serious concerns, of course, that they're asking to eliminate the OR zoning. That OR zoning was put in place in the comprehensive plan with an intention of maintaining the parcel in perpetuity to preserve and protect the parcel. Those wetlands are important, and to override that zoning because a developer would like to make more money is insane. This city developed a comprehensive plan, and we need to maintain that comprehensive plan. To that end, I'd like you to deny, obviously, SSA 3-2022, as there is no right to rezoning for the profit developer. Under a PD zoning, another thought that nobody seems to have addressed tonight, but I think is really critical to think about, is that's a mixed use designation. How many properties in this city have we given rezoning to, and then the developer has flipped them? Mixed use means Live Local Act. Live Local Act means this city loses all control over development of that parcel. I haven't heard anybody speak to that, but I think it's a very important point. And again, this proposal by Bristol is clearly intentionally deficient. This board has determined, in fact, that the application does not meet the guidelines that it has to meet. So I urge you to deny.
Next card, please.
Vicky Conklin.
Good evening. I'm Vicki Conklin, 2920 Royal Oak Drive in Titusville. I recommend denial of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning from RCE, our Regional Commerce, and OR to plan development for 4 reasons. There are more, but I'll list 4. It violates the comprehensive plan regarding access. It violates the comprehensive plan by eliminating the commercial area, which we've discussed at previous meetings, the importance of maintaining the commercial zones for our community as we grow. It violates the comprehensive plan by eliminating the OR zoning. And as Ms. Parker stated, OR zoning is meant to be there forever in perpetuity for the enjoyment of the residents. It's not meant to be a placeholder. And the 4th thing is, how is plan development, how did that category come apart when the development is really just apartments? If they wanted apartment zoning, why didn't that go for apartment zoning? Plan development, I thought, meant that it was more, that there was a combination of different kinds of things in that development, not just apartments. So I strongly recommend denial. Thanks.
Thank you. Next card, please.
Zachary Fulgenzi.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the chance to talk. I stay at 8117 Windover Way. My name is Zachary Fulgenzi. We've lived here a little over 2 years. We're pretty close to the spot over here, right about here. We moved to this spot because there wasn't the existence of large, high-density housing. I work in the area. We moved here for work, and I tried to find something close that was quiet. This is one of the last spots to do so. Most of my coworkers referred me to this area just exactly for this reason. It would be a huge conflict for me and my family. I got 2 little ones and another one due next month. I even trained my wife how to navigate that corner and how to avoid it and when to. It's a big deal. It's a hot topic. I can't remember the other thing I was going to say, but I can challenge and kind of settle this opinionated debate of whether traffic will or will not go that route. If you pull out Google Maps on your phone and you drop a pin of that location and navigate anywhere around that shopping center, Home Depot, or anything, it will take you right there through that Owen Windover Trail. I don't need to show you my phone, even though I could. You can all do it yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
George Donnell.
George Donald, 7602 Wendover, also 8251. Probably should have been the first one up here. The engineer, Wendover Way, it's at 50. Part of that is on my property. I just paid $8,500 for a survey, and part of Wendover's on my property, and I don't think there's 60 foot between the right-of-ways. I don't know that for a fact, but I do know where my line is, and it's furnace certified. And the traffic would be terrible. It's hard enough to get in and out the way it is now. So an engineer needs to do a survey out there, do a check-in, and see what they got. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
That was the last card.
Okay. I'll call a 10-minute break. Chelsea, would you come up here a second? Okay, if we'll come back to order, please. Okay, Mr. Oliver, you have a chance for rebuttal. Everybody, please be quiet.
Maybe, we'll see. We'll see. Thank you. We heard a lot of what the concerns that we expected, the traffic concerns, the drainage concerns, et cetera. There were a couple of comments there I just wanted to address real briefly. I know it's been a long night and we have another one of these. I don't know if everyone's going to re-say the same thing. I don't intend to. I just reiterate what was said before. But the reason we switched from the high density to the PD is the high density residential has a 15 units per acre. So we tried to bring that down to the PD level, which is the 11.7 units per acre. Also going with the PD zoning district allowed us to set some more stringent guidelines as to setbacks, building coverage areas, et cetera, that aren't contained in the high density residential. So despite, some of the accusations, it was done in a manner to try to reduce the potential impacts, intensity of the development. The comments on the OR land, that land is preserved. It's got a conservation easement. It meets the objective of the comp plan policy. To the extent that there's an accusation that St. John's Water Management staff may release that, I resent that for our staff's behalf. But if it makes the city more comfortable, we can double up that easement. We can give that easement to the city as well. You guys can have the same easement on top of it. You both can enforce it if you want to. That's allowed. The drainage will meet all the standards of the city code and the codes set by the state and the engineers from our property. The pre-existing conditions are the pre-existing conditions of that neighborhood. We're happy to coordinate with the citizens there and try to work with them to find a method to, if there's a way to help resolve in our power those existing conditions, we'll work with them to the extent we can. And then, kind of getting to the rub of it is some of the comments that the city should protect the commercial development, the commercial areas of the city. I understand that concept, but the comp plan has no 20% guideline. That's a number that came out of the Live Local code. That is not in our comp plan. What the comp plan says is appropriate and adequate commercial space for the area. Given the traffic that is driven by commercial spaces, especially regional commercial spaces, it seems like we're in a tug of war here where they're saying, well, we want you to keep the regional commercial space, but we don't want any traffic. What we're trying to bring forward is a proposal that reduces that density and intensity of development, reduces the traffic impacts as shown in that traffic impact analysis. That 8,700 number goes even higher if it's pure regional commercial space, or if we include some of the properties on Mr. Donnell's property. So we're trying to bring that down, and that's the important part for everyone to review, and the impacts of this commercial, or the comp plan and the rezoning hearing, is we're not supposed to look at the impacts of the land as they sit today. It's the impacts of the land as they are currently zoned. And this is a down zoning and a reduced intensity of use under both the comp plan and the zoning criteria. And that's really all I have tonight. I appreciate y'all's patience and consideration. It's been a long evening already, and I know we're not done. Thank you.
Mr. Payson, do you have a question?
I do. So for this,
for me or
for you, this is for you. The apartments that are going up, what will be the average rental rate of the apartments?
There would be market rate apartments. So, not to be facetious, I think that they are hoping there'll be about $2 of what they call $2 a square foot. Again, as I said, I don't like to do math in public, but they have the average square foot prices or the average unit sizes are in there. That's, I think, what they're hoping to target. I don't know what the market will bear here.
Okay, so being that it's market rate means it's not affordable housing.
That's not what we're proposing tonight. That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, any questions of the staff? It comes back to the commission. Mr. Garad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a few questions regarding the discussion we've had on this traffic study and the questions formerly I asked about the direction and the citizens whose comments were the boundary of the study. One of the attributes in that study I couldn't see addressed is what is, because of these turning movements that are illustrated, the citizens did a good job with the one-way directional left turn southbound on Wendover Way and the nature of traffic patterns. Myself, I've been there, today I went there myself just to watch it, and it's one of those areas that are subject to weaving movements because the traffic patterns in the study are as if all traffic's going one direction, as the study shows, east, west, north, south. In the case of the actual traffic patterns, observation would suggest that you have a point of conflict that is amplified because of those traffic patterns caused by where people are going. Earlier, they mentioned traffic attraction and traffic generators, traffic receivers, and that commercial development creates that pattern. People are trying to do a U-turn to get to McDonald's, or they're doing a U-turn to get to Starbucks, or they're doing a U-turn to shoot to Home Depot. And so just in my brief thumbnail picture today, I saw evidence of that consistently over about a 15-minute period, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is pre-PM peak that the study addresses. I would only think it would amplify the farther into that peak period. What would you, and this is a KB if I've got that right, I don't want to make a mistake, what do you see happening, or are you experienced to see that in that particular property area where you have this very consistent weaving of traffic? It's dangerous for anybody, especially if your intention from this site were to be to leave Wendover Way and want to go to Lowe's or want to go to 405. You're going to shoot across those 4 lanes at the same instance people are shooting the opposite across the 4 lanes, and it's what it is, and it happens routinely. And I ask you that question.
Could you repeat the question?
No one's addressed the point of conflict that exists with Wendover Way. There were some comments about traffic accidents and increasing and decreasing due to the construction of a left turn lane that's dedicated and constricts that to only that movement. However, there's a consistency of U-turn trips there, where that's the point of conflict. A person making that U-turn is directly in conflict with someone turning right, the way the traffic study shows. And they in themselves are trying, as the traffic study supports, go to the left lane to turn left on 405 to some percentile of the study. Yet that's occurring in the study as if everything's straight and linear and flowing. In the reality, it's a conflict caused by this weaving motion.
I see. So, so you're asking if those weaving maneuvers, et cetera, are accounted for in the calculations in the traffic study?
The study didn't address any weaving movements. They don't address anything except volume. They're not attempting to address the conflict and what occurs because of conflict, which is impacts.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the in the model, there are some factors that can be applied that can account for some of those maneuvers, and also other activities that occur within the mid-block. You are correct. The analysis focuses on the nodes, assuming everything moves straight to the node, and then made the turn from the node and nothing happened in between. But there are some factors that can be applied in the model that can account for that. And it will be reflected in the, excuse me, in the capacity values that the model calculates. Also, it'll be reflected in the delays, for example, and the queuing lengths that the model generates. So,
Thank you.
yeah, it is somehow captured.
So kind of like in a layman's sense, what the citizens are commenting, they anticipate because is something that could be anticipated because it's going to naturally occur from those conflicts that exist in the weaving moments.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer.
Member Moscoso.
Yeah, I would say each of us kind of has our thing that we are passionate about. Member Gerard, it's normally the building heights, and today it's the traffic. And for me, it definitely is the roads. And so I actually, he's going to hold this for me. We've been talking a lot about collector and arterial roads, and I just happen to have this. This is from the city, but I definitely don't see Wendover Way as a collector or an arterial road. And I think that, when I got appointed, I'm one of the newer members. I was given our comp plan and told this is what you follow. You don't get to make decisions willy-nilly. And so my question to staff, whether that's KB or Eddie, so one of the points that is just right here, it says Bristol PD Master Plan has direct access onto Wendover Way, a local road, which is not in compliance with the City of Titusville's LDR review criteria, Titusville LDR Chapter 34, Article 2, Division 1, Section 34-40, A1B, and Section 35-5-5A2. Could you guys just explain? Because a year ago, we had something that we actually denied and City Council denied. It was on Tropic Street. It was a multifamily development at R3. It wasn't a planned development, but that was denied because it was going off on a local road. And it's just hard for me to understand. At times, we get recommendations to deny, and at times, we don't have really any guidance. And so I would like to know, I might be interpreting the comp plan a little bit differently, but I'd like some clarity on that.
Sure. So on page 117, about line 30, we describe access. And so the staff comment is, the master plan illustrates 2 points of access from Wendover Way, which is not an arterial or collector road per section 9.4.3. So we acknowledge that it's a local road. Portions of Wendover Way are in the county and portions are in the city. And I think what you're referring to as far as why we're seeing multifamily along a local road is that requirement applies to multifamily. And in the PD, as was mentioned earlier, the criteria is a little bit different. It talks about generating traffic on a local road in a residential area. But the question remains, is this truly a PD in that it creates some type of unique development? Or do you feel that this is similar to a multifamily apartment complex and nothing more? And so that's open for debate.
Yeah, I think without a concept plan, it's really hard to know. I mean, what we have is that it's, I think, 6 buildings, 4 stories. And so for me, that looks like a multifamily development, just from the information we've received. Thank you very much.
Alternate Member Flindler, you had, okay. Member Faison.
Generally speaking, which generates more traffic? A development such as this, or a commercial building or property that could be built on this very same site? Which one would generate, generally speaking, more traffic?
So we have to know the specific land uses. So for example, what is the mixture of, say, residential versus commercial versus restaurant and so on? That's how we could determine exactly which one would determine more. If we're assuming 100% residential and 100% commercial, as an example, then it would be commercial.
Okay.
But yes, yeah, we have the, and you can look at, it's the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, has a trip generation manual where they've compiled the average trip generation rates as well as some other statistics for various, there's like 900 different land use categories. And that's the standard that we go off of.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, because again, traffic generation has been one of the overarching themes this evening about how much traffic this development could bring if it's an apartment. But yet it's already zoned for regional commercial. And so let's say that we just hypothetically say that the apartment complex wasn't what's being built here, then it would be a commercial product of some sort. Would they still have the very same argument that there's still too much traffic? So they're going to always have the argument of traffic because if something gets built there, anything gets developed there, it's going to generate more traffic regardless of what it is. So the question is, how do we minimize that impact? And so thank you for answering the question that if it was 100% commercial, that 100% commercial property may generate more traffic than the apartment complex does. Thank you.
Member Garad.
In light of your comment, thank you about IT and the manual. I'm a little understanding of it. I'm not a transportation engineer or transportation planner, but understanding it, the manual is updated, and I'm not sure what it is, 14th edition now. It's updated. The environment by which the models that are illustrated in the ITE that are based on events change because the environment by which the model of commercial, as you mentioned, as opposed to a restaurant, as opposed to a movie theater, as opposed to a duplex, as opposed to a multiple family, multiple story, high density, they all change. One of the significant changes that gets modeled, as I understand and experience to say, is there's variables that can change the attribute of those numbers. Taking this one as an example and taking the comprehensive plan more as a fabric, as a standard to examine changes and what you approve or disapprove for that change, the fabric of the comprehensive plan speaks towards connectivity. Titusville seeks to have connectivity through pedestrian, non-motorized vehicular ways, bike lanes, and that is throughout the comprehensive plan in different elements and policies, goals, and objectives. In the case you have development that has connectivity, does ITE separate those models' values if you have, for example, a high-density residential high-rise in an urban area with connectivity and direct access onto pedestrian ways and transit hubs, as opposed to the same land use designated somewhere where there is no connectivity and the only mode of transportation that will take place is vehicular? Are the numbers higher and lower in those circumstances?
Well, I can answer that by saying that, so the latest edition of the IT does differentiate between general urban and suburban. So that would be where you would have the effect of pedestrian connectivity, et cetera, tied in. But I can't say off the top of my head which one would be higher or lower.
Well, I to kind of follow it up, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the point that I would make, and I'd welcome the other members to look if, you said it's in the star, is that?
So Member Garad had emailed some street view photos, and so those are available on your desktop on the agenda star. By double-clicking the star, it says agenda. If you need help, please let me know, and I'll come up and assist.
And for the public, what these are pictures of your roads. I pulled them off of satellite imagery, Google, and I composition-wise tried to look at northbound on Windover Way to the intersection with 50, and then I turned 360, traveled down Windover Way to the Windover Trail to examine the intersection, then south of the intersection looking north in sequence 1 through 8. And then I also scaled out a walking distance, assuming somebody would be prone to walk. If they chose to walk, regardless of the transportation study, they probably are not going to choose to walk out to Highway 50, as the photographs will illustrate, because there is no sidewalk. The sidewalk picks up about 0.3 miles, 0.33 miles from the assumed entrance on Windover Way. You go up to 50, you hang a right, and somewhere down there, there's a sidewalk that begins. And then you don't really have much of a sidewalk connectivity, so a person that might want a country mile walk would be prone to walk through the local streets. And I found it interesting that you have a conflict on pedestrian because you have a guardrail over, I believe, the same ditch. I don't know if it's Addison Canal or what it is, but there's a principal drainage ditch, and the road is constrained because the guardrails come into the pavement edge. And if I were walking that way, certainly in daytime, I'd be concerned there's nowhere to go unless you're going to jump over the guardrail. And it just doesn't seem it's likely a pedestrian way could be developed there at all. And I tried to check earlier with staff as to how sidewalks might be planned. I wouldn't want to present something that is planned to have a sidewalk built next year. The problem is it's county city jurisdiction, but I sincerely doubt, from my experience, you'd see a sidewalk plan for a 60-foot rural section with drainage ditches. Given constraining factors, I can't see a sidewalk being developed. So the point that I was making is that without an alternative way to get to it, other than a vehicle, whether they turn right or left, they're all going to be vehicle-driven trips. And in the comprehensive plan, as the fabric goes, we should look at this for connectivity. And this connectivity is only one facet. It's not multiple facets. There's no, and staff had, I think, a comment that we could ask to have a connection or ask the applicant if this were to be considered for approval to stripe a bike lane. But you're only going to get the bike lane till you get to Highway 50, and dare say that's kind of a dangerous road to be riding a bike on in the pavement, let alone that it wouldn't be striped beyond the point. So the reason I took the pictures and the reason I'm bringing the point up is I would look at this property as being more in a suburban setting, notwithstanding it's in the urban area, urban service boundary, water and sewer and all the good stuff, but it is in a rural section of road networking. It's in a rural setting that isn't what you see with multiple family, higher density residential development in the core urban area where you do have those infrastructure improvements such as sidewalks, bike lanes, and other ways to move people without cars. So my whole point to this is the models are illustrating vehicular traffic only, and there's no relief to that. There's only vehicular traffic. Some models take into account alternative transportation modes, and so those factors and numbers can change, reducing the numbers. And is that fair analysis?
That's a fair analysis, yes. However, again, it's as it stands now, the trip generation manual only has categories urban, suburban. I think it has another one within a certain radius to transit. So you have to pick one of those categories. It's not like you can pick the rate and then you can determine that, okay, you have this amount of connectivity, therefore you can apply some factor to increase or decrease the trip. Yeah, currently we don't have that, yes. Yeah.
Any more questions?
I have one.
Mr. Childs?
Do we know if there was ever a commercial development that was ever proposed or came to your office for this parcel, or do you know?
I think the applicant mentioned back in 2000.
Oh, is that the 2008? That's the one. Was it 2008?
Right.
That was the original. So if there were a commercial development done on this property, would our regulations allow access to Wendover Way from that commercial development? Is that true too, or no?
So there's currently a concept plan that's tied to the zoning on the property, so they'd have to revive that concept plan, which includes the property to the north.
That's right. Okay.
Otherwise, they'd have to rezone and remove that concept plan.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Anyone care to make a motion? Mr. Garrard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read through the application, the data, as I've heard the presentation, the concerns of the citizens, and certainly my own concerns from my experience, I believe that this is not the correct land use as a change requested. And it's principally because I don't believe it can support its community with anything that provides for transportation to and from those residential units than a vehicle. I think the existing land use and zoning that's there in the commercial sense, and as was described, that there's not necessarily a hard fact line number and percentage of what you should have for commercial. If Titusville is in a transition where we're growing residentially and we're shrinking what commercial areas we have, it's going to become an imbalance if it's not already an imbalance. And when you add to that the fact that folks in this neighborhood, if the change is approved, are going to be forced to drive cars with no alternative available, period. I cannot support this request, and I recommend denial.
Sure, your motion is to recommend denial. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Member Moscoso. Any discussion? Any discussion? Roll call, please, Lori.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Faison,
Yes.
Member Childs,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Aton,
Yes.
Member Garad,
Yes?
Member Moscoso,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. So that will go to city council next week. Eddie, is it next week?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion, whether it was specific to the future land use. I think we need two.
Yes, I'll apologize. I should have made it for 9B, the Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment, SSA number 32022.
But I think you spoke to the land use, so we'd like a second motion for the rezoning.
Certainly, to capture that, I'll also follow it with a recommendation to deny the request 9C, the Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, CPA.
No, not 9C yet, we're not there yet. We're looking at
The-
9B, the second ordinance.
The two parts of that application, yes, common to both of them, the Comprehensive Plan Amendment and the small scale.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Member Faison. Lori, have you got that straight? Okay. Any other discussion?
Chairman, I'd like to add real quick, since the proposed change to the future land use was not recommended for approval, that as is, staff would not recommend approval of, or not, our recommendation would not to be to approve the rezoning because it would be inconsistent with the comp plan. Thank you.
Roll call, please, Lori.
Member Faison,
Yes.
Member Moscoso,
Yes.
Member Garad, Vice Chairman Aton.
Yes.
Member Childs.
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Chairman Richardson.
Yes. Okay, so we go to 9C. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And 9C, again, is the text amendment that would have added the density and development standards for the PD in our comp plan. And so if there's no change to the future land use layer on this property, then there's no need to amend the text of the comp plan. Thank you.
Okay. We have to hear from the applicant first.
There does need to be a public hearing
Yeah.
here from the applicant, and we do need a motion.
Okay.
I have nothing further to add than what we stated in the first hearing. We can hear all the speaker cards if you want, but I understand where we're going. So I would just for the record move in the prior testimony and the staff's reports and all the exhibits that were shown to you all.
Okay. And this will be heard next week at City Council,
This will be heard on July 23rd.
July 23rd. Okay, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. I hope you realize what we've done so far. Ms. Milton?
If everybody in Wendover agrees, I can speak for this one, Sandy and I, just the two of us. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay? That's all right? I may need more than 3
So-
minutes, but
Ms. Milton and
Sandra Klinger,
Ms. Klinger are the only ones.
they'll speak to this item. All the other, everybody else is saying that they're giving up their time.
Everybody agrees. Okay.
Everybody's good with that? Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. If you look at this, your package that staff gave you, there's a table in there. And this table names PDs that are currently in the city of Titusville. And they're wanting to add this Bristol Titusville to this table. As you can see, San Mateo is only 2.81 dwelling units per acre. Brooks Landing is 1.57 dwelling units per acre. Inspiration Village, 4.3. Now you look at Willow Creek. Why did they say 1,277 residential units max? Well, if my memory serves me right, and the internet's correct, Willow Creek was 683 acres. Well, if you do that calculation, it's 1.86 units per acre, which is consistent with all the other ones above. All of a sudden, now you have Bristol, 11.7 units per acre. That's way outlier. That's way different than what Titusville's been approving on PDs. The other point to make with this is Bristol Development was taking that 5.5 acres of OR zoning, adding it to, which is why they went to the PD, by the way, adding it to the 25 plus acres of commercial to try to get the density higher for development reasons. In other words, the 11.7 units per acre. So that's the point, and this should not be approved, ever.
Ms. Klinger? I'm good. Thank you. So if there's no one else, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion among the members? Because it comes back here. I don't think, do you want to rebut anything?
Nothing other than what's previously said, the first rebuttal that
Okay.
didn't work, so.
Okay. Anyone care to make a motion or any discussion? Item 9C.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd make a motion to deny item 9C, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, CPA 2-2024 Bristol.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Childs. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Lori.
Member Moscoso?
Yes.
Member Garad?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Aton?
Yes.
Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
And just to clarify, that motion was made due to the inconsistency with the comp plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. As you heard, this will be heard by council on,
I wanted to clarify, both items 9B and 9C will be heard by City Council for a first reading on July 9th. The public hearing will be July 23rd.
that's right. Thank you all for coming. Are there any petitions or requests from the public present? Anybody want to say anything?
Thank you.
We rarely get applause. Reports, staff,
No report. Thank you.
city attorney? No report. Chairperson, I'll just remind everybody that you've got until July 1st to file that ethics and public disclosure form. And I attempted to, and it kept kicking me out. And then I called this state number, and they said I talked to Wanda Wells, and before I could talk to her, I figured it out. It's so simple, but pardon me, Chris, software people make it extremely difficult.
We get paid per click.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So if you haven't done it, you need to do it by July the 1st. Yes.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. The July 3rd meeting is canceled.
Yeah.
So the next P and Z meeting would be the 17th? Yes, sir. I have to announce I won't be here. I'll be away from the country, so I won't be attending that meeting. I won't be here on the meeting in July 17th.
You'll be out of the country. Any other items to come up? Well, I've got to tell you, I think we've handled this extremely well. Damn it. Okay, meeting is adjourned.